was your first opportunity to become an art designer in a game?
Okay, well, I mean, at university level, when you're kind of narrowing down your interests, again, I graduated over 5 years ago now, so back then there was a lot more AAA development. There was a lot more studios with kind of 50 or more people, and so everyone has a lot smaller and more specific role in that kind of environment. So you'll have environment artists, and you'll have asset artists, and you'll have character artists, and creature and weapon artists even on the biggest studios. So it's all very specific. And so for a 3D title, you have the option of going into those areas. Now, with the kind of collapse of AAA, so to speak, you've got a lot more small studios and indie studios. And as an artist, you're going to be doing a bit of everything. You have to help wherever you can to get the product out the door. And you may only be one or two artists in the team, and you will do everything from UI to animation to anything else. But going back to the question specifically, when I graduated, my interests were in games design and environment art. After I graduated, I went to Edutainment University to do my postgrad to try and get some kind of more skills. And my first job was as a 3D artist for Forever Wild forget the name, but that was my first job. And generally, that job required me to do environment art as well as animals because it was a small studio. So again, the dynamic of the market changed and the studios changed while I was doing my education. And so although initially I wanted to be an environment artist, I ended up being a general 3D artist and interested in everything. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but that's just kind of, you need the history to understand what the options are and how they've changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you can't just limit yourself to one niche role, right?
Well, again, it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to get into AAA where everyone has a very refined role, then you do have to specialize because you have to be the best you can be to beat everyone to that kind of job. But in general kind of studios when there's only about 10 people, yeah, you need to have a general understanding of 3D to be able to make characters, to be able to make environment art, or whatever's required of you.
You briefly mentioned about Forever Wild.
Yes.
Can you briefly describe what that game's about? It was a Facebook title, isn't it?
It's a Facebook game made in Unity in 3D for a charity called the European Nature Trust. And this was my first job straight out of uni. And I was the sole artist, which was pretty daunting at the time. So I got brought in. The company itself, Waracle Limited, was a web and app company, so they weren't a games developer. And they brought on board some experience. They brought on a guy called Lol Scragg and Bruce McNeish, who are 20-year games veterans, so they've been doing it a long time. And they were kind of brought on to consult and manage the project. Lol had worked at like Signosis and worked on like Lemmings and worked on like did he work on, I don't want to quote things that aren't accurate, but he's been around a long time. And they brought a designer with them, and then after those three guys, they brought me on from Edutainment University. And so yes, I helped make that. We made that game over about a year and a bit. And it was a very interesting project. It's dealing with basically deforestation and wildlife conservation in Romania, and where huge swathes of land are being deforested and the wildlife kind of removed. And so the game was kind of a response to that, to then educate the public and to potentially generate some charity money, income, to self-sustain the project and to support the wildlife there. Now, the charity itself actually survives quite happily off charitable donations from very rich people. So they didn't necessarily need the game, but it was a good way to get the public involved because they just go straight to people with a lot of money. And so the charity itself isn't well known. And this was to do with PR as well.
How important was the message in Forever Wild to you?
To me personally?
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting. And I can agree with it up to a point, but then, as a working person, I can't, you've got people coming to you in the street every day from UNICEF and everywhere else wanting, fresh water for children, and deforestation in Romania isn't particularly high up on my list of places to give money to, and then, I'm passing homeless people in the street every day, so there's a bit of context to that. Working with it in a job was another thing, because then I have to understand it to be able to deal with it as a topic. So I guess it doesn't affect me hugely, but I think it's a good cause.
So do you think we should see more of these games that provide people with, provide to a good cause, charitable games? Do you think we should see more of these?
I think you'd be surprised that there's a lot out there already. Again, it depends on the amount of development money that's gone into it. You've got causes like Indie Humble Bundle, and places like that, which are kind of reselling games that exist that aren't charitable games, but then take a cut for charity. And I think that's really powerful because a lot of money then gets boosted into charitable organisations that way. But games specifically about charities and causes, again, they have to be done well. Otherwise, they can be kind of branded as kind of edutainment and things like that, which people aren't particularly interested in. It's a task for a good games designer. And yes, of course, I'd like to see more because a good game is a good game regardless of what it's for and where the money's going. So yes, I would like to see more of those kind of games. Games for education. There's quite a few people that talk to this, and that games for education, there's massive rifts between those and commercial games. So your Call of Duties, your Marios, all of that kind of stuff. And so people aren't keen to work with those kind of products, and a lot of the time they're poorly done to the point where they're trying to shove education down your throat before it's fun. Whereas games should be, well, not all games are fun, but games in that kind of context should be fun to encourage you to want to go back and learn and do all of that kind of thing. But at the moment it's been done badly for so long, there's a big divide. There's a lot of companies now doing very well in that market. Preloaded in London is a company that we talk to, and we have some graduates working there now, and they make much higher quality educational games that fit in with curriculum. They're not just for education's sake, they're actually part of that kind of stuff. And I've been approached before by people who are providing curriculum for other countries who want apps and on devices where they can afford that kind of stuff. That is gamer-centric. It's gamified education. It's shown to be kind of more engaging. So yeah, I mean, it's evolving, but it's got a long way to go. There's still a big divide.